Welcome to the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast. Today is our 100th episode. To celebrate, we are going to review some of our most popular and favorite episodes. Your Bar Exam Toolbox hosts are Allison Monahan and Lee Burgess. That's me. We're here to demystify the bar exam experience so you can study effectively, stay sane, and hopefully pass and move on with your life. We're the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the career-related website Career Dicta. Allison also runs the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your favorite listening app and check out our sister podcast, the Law School Toolbox podcast. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us via the contact form on barexamtoolbox.com, and we'd love to hear from you. And with that, let's get started.
Welcome back to the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast. Today we have a very special show for you because we are celebrating the release of our 100th episode. Woohoo!
Woohoo! Something to celebrate.
Absolutely. Hey, let's take it.
I know. So I was actually thinking about the decision to start the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast, separate from the Law School Toolbox podcast, a few years back. And I realized I think I was pregnant with my daughter then.
Oh, wow.
I'm very much not pregnant. She just celebrated her second birthday. But we were trying to get a whole bunch of episodes ready to cover my maternity leave and just how time flies. Or doesn't in COVID. I don't even know anymore. What month is it? It's hard for me to track.
Right. Well, at least you have children, so you can, keep track of how old they are and sort of figure out time.
That's true. It does help. They're good anchors in that way.
Exactly. She was not walking then, so it was probably at least a year ago.
I know. It's funny how often we do use my children as benchmarks for time. So today, what we thought would be kind of fun is to go back through kind of some of the most popular podcast episodes that you guys seem to be listening to. And then Allison and I are going to have a chance to share some of our favorites that may not have made your list. So this was kind of a fun episode to prep because some of these are throwbacks from our early days. So it's always nice to hear that people are still listening to them.
Yeah, and it's interesting always to see what people are listening to and find resonates, because sometimes it's stuff that we're like, oh, that's great that everyone's listening to it, and then there always, I feel like in every case, there are these hidden episodes where we feel like you should be listening to them, and they're great, and no one is, so we're going to give a plug for some of those.
It's true. Yep. All right, so let's kick it off with the first most popular episode of all time. Is episode number 42, which is Memorization Techniques for the Bar Exam. And in this episode, we discussed how to prepare your own study materials, focusing on easy to memorize formats, the importance of term of art and elements, and how to use different memorization techniques. And we talk about spaced repetition, immersion, acrostics? I'm even reading this going what did we call it? How do we even pronounce it?
I think we talk about this in the episode, and I have no idea how you pronounce it. Acrostics? I have no idea.
Acrostics? I know. Visualization, memory palaces, storylining, and even handwriting as ways to learn important concepts. And then we also really talk about when you should start memorizing for the bar exam, because that's something that a lot of people have different opinions on. So I don't think I was that surprised necessarily that this was a popular episode, because so many bar takers we talk to, one of the common things they'll say is, well, I struggled learning all the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just had a conversation the other day with someone who was asking me, when should I start memorizing? And I said, well, pretty much now. Even though you're 2 months out from the October exam, roughly. And she said, oh, really? I thought I should do it all in the last week or so. And, we'll give you a preview of that episode. We don't recommend that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And I think that in this, COVID world with these moving bar exam dates, which is such a frustration, I think there can be this feeling of delay.
Right.
But, even if you are taking an October exam and you're listening to this episode in August, it's time to study.
Oh, yeah.
And start to move this stuff into your long-term memory.
Yeah, and I think this is an area where a lot of the commercial bar review providers lack content. They give you all the stuff, everybody tells you what the law is. They often give it in a lecture format, but they don't really tell people what to do with that or even how to do that. So I think there is this gap of okay, great. Well, I have these telephone books of information that's being given to me. What am I supposed to do with it? So that's sort of what we talk about. And also I think memorization is really personal. So what works for one person doesn't really work for another. So sometimes you just need to try things out. So if you are struggling to remember things, I think this is a great episode to get some new ideas and try them out.
Yeah. Even if you're in the middle of your studying and you are figuring out that it's not really working for you and you're following all of the recommendations, which I'll be honest was what I did, I had this moment where I was kind of like, if I don't start studying the way I think I need to study, I don't think I'm going to pass.
Right.
So you also have to just be really like own this process. When it all comes down to it, this is your test and you have to prepare for it in the best way you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need some memorization tips, check out number 42, our most popular episode. Make it even more popular.
I know. All right. Our second most popular episode is our episode 10, which is our top 5 bar essay writing tips with our special guest, one of our favorite tutors, Ariel Salzer, our first tutor we ever hired. So
yeah, and Ariel is so
longevity.
Great. Yeah, she's super great. This is a great episode, and I think anyone who's taking the bar could really benefit from this. You know, she talks about why the bar is so challenging, the best way to prepare for the essays, why it's so important to do timed practice, rewriting. One of these really key concepts, you have to do what makes you feel uncomfortable. And she also has a great blog post on that topic. That's one of our most popular blog posts. And also just how to prepare mentally and emotionally and to really think about what the bar graders are looking for. So I think this is a really like jam-packed episode from a very experienced bar tutor.
Yeah, I mean, she has worked with so many people at a variety of pain points kind of in this process, you know, people who need accommodations and are struggling to get them and are having to, you know, work with learning differences and trying to execute this exam, people who are high performers and are overstudying and trying to get them to kind of, I guess, understudy. Is that what
back
off a little. Be more strategic in their studying. You know, people who really have struggled with writing a long time. The breadth of students that she has worked with really gives her advice, I think, a special zing to it. And so also she's just a smart, wonderful, capable person. And I love talking to her in person. So I'm glad that she agrees to be on the podcast periodically.
Right. And I think right now, you know, there's so much in this, even though this was recorded several years ago, about preparing mentally and emotionally, which is so important, you know, in this pandemic where things are shifting and it's really hard to even figure out what you should be doing and to stay focused, you know, and then around, you know, doing the difficult stuff, I think one of the things people are really struggling with right now is not necessarily wanting to practice in the exact online format that they're going to have to take this test in. So, you know, I get it. Like, it's easier to print out your essays and mark them up on scratch paper and, you know, do the things you've traditionally done. Unfortunately, that's not the reality you're dealing with. So, you know, you've got to start practicing in the format you're going to take the exam in pretty much immediately. And that can be really hard to force yourself to do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to have to take this. If I was sitting for this test, I wouldn't want to have to take it online. That's not how I'm used to doing it. And I've had some pretty challenging conversations with some prospective students about, you know, what the realities of that look like. And I think people are struggling with having to do things differently. None of us like to have to, you know, switch up what we feel comfortable doing and the way we've always taken exams. And everyone's in the same boat. You just got to do it right now. That is what it is. This is the world we're getting handed.
So I think just having that mindset of like, all right, this is probably not an ideal scenario, but it's the scenario I'm dealing with, and I have to figure out ways to basically make myself deal with this reality is something that, you know, Ariel kind of deals with in this episode.
Yeah. So that's a good one. It's a rich one. All right. Well, next up, what I did is I found kind of a bundle of episodes that kind of all went together. So this was our 3rd and 6th most popular episodes, which all covered the performance test, which I think is an area that a lot of people do struggle with. And so our first was episode 9, which is mastering the performance test with another one of our fabulous tutors, Doretta McGinnis. And the second episode is number 54, which is called Last Minute Tips for the Performance Test. So in episode 9, we talk about why the performance test is hard, different types of assignments you may encounter, and the importance of practice and even a bit more practice, and why you actually have to have a plan and an attack plan for how to execute this part of the test. So it's it's a rich episode, and it's good to have it paired with episode 54, where we talk about, focusing on your audience and tone and the organization of your writing. We talk about writing in an IRAC versus a CREAC format, and then tips for interpreting the material in the packet and how important it is to follow directions. So, the PT is still my favorite part of the exam, but it's still a part that causes a lot of struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's always sad when you see someone who basically would have passed if they had just done a little better on the PT, because, that you don't have to know anything for. You don't have to memorize any law for that one. You just have to show up, have a plan, execute the plan, answer the question, follow the directions, get the point of it. It's just frustrating for people when that's what's holding them back.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that the COVID realities are going to make the PT additionally challenging, because a lot of jurisdictions are now moving online, and it's going to be critical that you practice in this online format with the PT. I know our team right now is working on our own best practices around this, because this one's a bit of a head scratcher. Some people are going to be able to have scratch paper, physical scratch paper. Some people may not. People are still figuring out what their jurisdictions are going to allow. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting challenge. But again, this is your reality. So there's no point in printing them out and marking them all up and writing scratch paper notes if your jurisdiction is not going to allow any of that.
Yeah, you've got to practice the exam as it's going to be given. There's no two ways about that.
Right. There's no platonic ideal of the bar exam. This is the bar exam you're sitting for. A different bar exam existed the last time it was given.
Yep.
And that's just how it is.
And I think it's important to remember that you're competing with people who are in the same situation, right, and they do curve these tests. And so, nobody's going, oh yeah, the PT's going to be online.
It's going to be awesome. Nobody's excited about it. Exactly.
Nobody is excited about that. So, I think making sure that you are connected to that reality, that everybody's taking part in this struggle, lightens your load maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of the opposite of like the rising tide lifts all boats. I was like, I don't know, the retreating tide sinks all boats. It's kind of what we're dealing with.
Or the tsunami sinks all boats. I don't even know what you would call this current time. Oh, that's nervous laughter because it's better than crying.
Exactly.
So many
excited, right?
So many nervous laughter moments in my life right now.
Yeah, seriously.
I know. Okay, so let's move on to our next kind of bundle of topics, which is on the MBE. And our fourth most popular episode was episode 7, which is a conversation with Sean Silverman, an MBE expert. And we talk about the MBE, obviously. Our fifth most popular episode was episode 50, which is what we learned by writing our POW course, which covers the MBE. And our ninth most popular episode was episode 18, Strategies for Mastering the MBEs. Oh, and wait for it, even our 10th most popular episode was episode 73, How to Learn the Law Necessary for the MBE. So what this showed
maybe people are a little concerned about the MBE. Are you getting that sense?
Just a smidge. Yeah. Just a smidge.
And hey, we've even got more episodes on this that we think you should be listening to.
Exactly, we do. So, I think that when the ones that I would add to this list, if you're looking for content on the MBE, are episodes 21 and 22, where Sean and I walk through MBE questions together. So we take some released questions from the NCBE and we just do MBE questions. Like, it sounds
so fun.
I know. The only people besides you who would think that was maybe an entertaining thing to do for an hour at a time might be Sean and I. But I think what's kind of interesting about these questions and listening to us talk through them is you can start to hear the reasoning and almost what our internal monologue would be if we were doing these questions in an exam format. I mean, we dialogue about them, but I just found that that's an exercise that most of us never do, is to slowly, methodically go through question by question like that and really kind of noodle on it. And that's what kind of led us to wanting to do more curriculum about the MBE, was this idea of what happens if you do a deep dive into these questions? What happens if you really think through them at a sophisticated level? What patterns can you start to see? And is this something you can really learn? And I'm saying this, and I hate multiple choice questions. And I mean, like, this is more your jam than my jam, but even for somebody who doesn't necessarily think in this way, I found just recording these episodes to be incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I think we were surprised when we did the POW course, which, as you said, are based on these 2 episodes, really. And one of the things I really took away from that people still don't really believe me on, but I'm absolutely convinced now is true. There are not like 2 close answers on these questions. So sometimes, oftentimes people say, well, I could eliminate 2 of the answer choices, but I just couldn't decide between the last 2. That's never actually true. What they're doing in the MBE is testing a very specific rule of law. And if you know that rule of law and you can logically think through basically the hypo as if you're taking an exam, there is always one clear correct answer. And I think people resist that, but I would go to bat for that 100%.
Yeah, I think that that's so true. I think that the MBE has some sort of like mystique around it.
Yes, I was going to use that exact word, of course.
Yeah, that it's like, it's impossible to figure out. There are no patterns. You can't really study it. It's all the rule against perpetuities and mortgages.
Right. And I'm just bad at multiple choice, so there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. And as someone who's not great at multiple choice, you can do something about it.
Yeah, you can literally learn that law, like that specifically, and you will get infinitely better at the MBE.
Yeah, you can. You can. And I think that you have to, though, have an openness to do that. So I hope that what it shows by people listening to those episodes is that they are open to working on those skills. But it is something that you need to dedicate time to. And again, if you're listening to this and you're taking one of the COVID online exams, you need to make sure you understand exactly what's going to be capable in the testing software with the 100 question set that's coming out in October, and make sure that you're practicing in that way. I think, we already liked tools like Adaptabar, but with the remote exams, you should only be doing MBE questions on your computer.
Absolutely. People sometimes resisted getting Adaptabar because they didn't want to do them on the computer. Now that is a selling point.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now our 7th most popular episode was episode 4, which is advice for first-time takers. This kind of warms my heart because I also always want the first-time takers to think outside the box.
Right. And the reality is we would love it if you listen to this episode and you do some of the things we suggest and then you pass and you move on. We don't want to be working with you as a repeat taker. Just pass the first time. It's so much better and easier.
It is so much better. It's so much easier. So in this episode, we discuss everything from evaluating if your bar program is working for you, the importance of practice, ways to avoid burnout, which can be, I think, really possible, especially if you're studying for a longer period of time. Things that you want to do to prepare for exam day. Now, these may not apply to the COVID world, but you can think through these things and still apply them to the COVID world. Seems like we might need to do a future episode about planning for your online exam day. And we talk about the realities of accommodations and why, if that's something that you need, you don't want to wait until the last moment to seek them. So, I think many people feel as a first-time taker that there's really only one way to prepare for the bar exam, which is hire the largest commercial bar review provider you can, give them all your money, and if you just do what they tell you to do, it'll all be okay.
Right. Well, we talk to people pretty much every day who've done that, and it didn't work out. So it works for some people, but I think you're going to be in a better position to pass if, as a first-time taker, regardless of how you decide to prepare, you take ownership of this process.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, you can start to think about this in your 3L year and start to try things out. You can test out different available programs for the MPRE, but you really just need to think about how you study. And if you didn't study in the same way as the person sitting next to you, why do you think one bar prep program is going to work for everybody? It's just not the way the world works.
No, and I think, it's funny because these are people, you've gone through 3 years of law school. And I think a lot of people come in as a 1L thinking like, there's one way to do law school. I have to make a long outline. This is what I do. If I do that, it'll be fine. I think most people learn that lesson pretty early on that it might not work for them. Yeah. So, they revise. Usually people start doing better, feeling more confident going into exams as, they get to 2L and 3L. And then you get to the bar and suddenly all of that just goes out the window. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why a lot of people fail.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you haven't started prepping for the bar, or you are prepping for the bar for the first time, just be really thoughtful about the steps that you're taking. And maybe this episode is a good one to check out so you're aware that you may have more choices and more autonomy than you think.
Yeah, and I think, there are more choices than there used to be. So sometimes people, I think, are getting bad advice from professors in schools who just grew up in this universe where it was like, well, you just sign up for this one course and everyone does it and that's what you do. Now we have all kinds of different things, for specific pieces of the test, or that are prepared in different ways or delivered in different ways or focus on different things. So you can kind of pick and choose, even if you have a large commercial course, you might decide to supplement that with something like Adaptable or with our Writing of the Week program to get more practice. These are the things you should be thinking through rather than just, I paid this money, so now I'm good.
Yeah. I think for first-time takers, the one other thing I wanted to mention, especially during the times of COVID, is that the format of the bar exam is changing quickly in some states or getting delayed. I mean, I think we're recording our COVID update right after this, and it just gives me anxiety thinking about recording that episode, let alone having to deal with.
No, you just see these headlines of like bar exam that was supposed to be next week has now changed completely. And you're like, oh my God, can you imagine?
I cannot even imagine. So, but if you get accommodations or you need accommodations and your accommodations were for the in-person exam, if you still need accommodations, and I'm really thinking about folks, not just with extended time, but who needed physical accommodations. So for medical reasons, like I know one of them that I know from a lot of people is needing to be able to go to the bathroom, needing to be able to, pump breast milk, needing to be able to stand because they have a back problem. Like there are lots of different things that we've seen come through. And they might have a tough time applying them to this remote exam. So if you have an accommodation and you think through it and you're not sure how it's going to apply, please, please, please reach out to the bar right now. Don't wait.
Yeah.
Just do it now, please.
Yeah. And I know at least in California, they do have options. Like there are ways to do it in person if you really need to. So,
right.
But you definitely need to be, very on top of this. And again, really think through like, what do you need to set yourself up for success here?
Yeah. Exactly. Our 8th most popular episode is episode 11, self-sabotaging behavior while studying for the bar exam. So this episode covers how studiers can set themselves up for failure by not reviewing your work, procrastinating, and even overstudying, having too many materials and not changing things up when it is needed. So I was kind of excited that this was on the list.
Oh yeah, you love this one.
Ariel's back for this one because she had a great list of self-sabotaging behaviors.
And I think this is one of those like huge issues with COVID. I mean, I know you have joined, maybe we shouldn't say it out loud, but you have joined a Cal Bar Repeater Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And so many people, I think, are just spending so much time and energy worrying about things that they don't have control over. Yeah. And that is such a big problem right now.
I think it is. I mean, let's be honest. The internet is a rabbit hole for all of us. I mean, how many times, even since COVID, have you and I been like, maybe we shouldn't be on Twitter and this and that?
Oh, I left Twitter years ago. Never looked back. Yeah. If anyone's following my Twitter feed, that is a bot.
I know, mine too. But
it's weird because we met on Twitter.
We did. But like Instagram, we can just go down the rabbit hole and then you read one thing and then you read like links to it. I mean, it's a really hard time right now to stay focused. And I think that, I'm a big fan of Facebook groups. I'm a member of a number of them that have a positive impact on my life. I think that sometimes down the rabbit hole you can go by listening to other people being very nervous. It's almost like why you wouldn't want to study in the library, talking to everyone about their concerns, let alone like 1,000 people or however
you have a virtual library. Oh my God. That's like, that would be, I'm just getting this vision of like the law library packed with thousands of people that I don't even know, like going frantically talking about all these things that are stressful. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what this Facebook group sounds like.
Yeah, it is. And there's, a lot of people are campaigning for diploma privilege and different things in California, which I don't believe are going to happen. And I think that people, I hope this isn't the case, but my feeling is that people are not studying and trying to gamble on the fact that they're going to get some of these allowances. And I just don't think they're going to happen. And I'm not a gambling person, so you need to be studying and you got to get off Facebook.
I mean, I am a gambling person, and I would not put my money on this. Like I'm pretty sure you're not going to get.
All my math friends are gambling people. It's funny. They're all like, well, I mean, it's all statistics.
Yeah,
even my husband will be like,
I would say your odds of getting diploma privilege in California are basically like 0.00000000. Like not happening. It's not happening. Don't spend time on this.
Yeah. So it's and hey, I'm not throwing stones. I have self-sabotaging behaviors. Totally.
My gosh. How many times have I been like, oh, I'm just going to lay down and read an article in the New Yorker or something, and 3 hours later I'm still on Instagram and it's 2 in the morning.
I know. Or like I'm supposed to go to bed by 10:30, but like it's 11:30 or later and I'm still, who knows? Who knows?
I'm a person who took Ambien at 2 a.m. last night when we were recording this theoretically at 9:30 in the morning, which is not actually time enough for Ambien to wear off.
So yeah, I mean, it's just a lot. It's a lot right now. So we all are having to check ourselves. But I think studying, nobody really wants to do it. It's very hard to do. It's hard to make ourselves do the things we don't want to do. So it's a good one to listen to. Very applicable. All right. Well, that was our most, broken into groups, but our 10 most popular episodes discussed. And then what I wanted to also do was touch on some of the episodes that are our favorites that I think didn't make this list. So my newer favorite, and I'm going to pretend that people are loving these episodes, but that they just haven't been around very long, so they don't have the readership or the listenership yet. So I'm going to play out that scenario for myself. But are my Listen and Learn series. I love this series. I love it. And let me tell you why. So what we are doing here is we're taking a very small concept, into very digestible pieces. So, I just recorded one on present sense impression versus the state of mind exceptions and evidence. All we're talking about is that, or one just on whether or not something is hearsay, or just one on the reasonable person standard. And one of the things that I think we don't often do when we think about bar prep is these highly tested issues is to think about them as just like, yeah, how would I notice if something is state of mind versus present sense impression? And you know what? That's how they test it on the MBE. They make it sound like it could be one of those, and they want you to know the difference between two things. And we go through hypos, 2 or 3, and apply this law over and over again. And this is just a small snapshot of basically the way that we think you should be studying. So if you haven't checked out our Listen and Learn series, I'm constantly updating it with new material. So soon there's going to be quite a number of them. And if you have specific topics that you think we should talk about, you can send us an email, and I'd be happy to do one on that topic. But I think they're really fun. Do you like them as much as I do? I record them, so I think I'm partial to them, but...
Well, I've heard great things about them from the people who listen to them. Have I personally investigated one of those? No.
Wait, you don't listen to my podcast episodes at night while you're cooking?
I do not listen to you talking about hearsay, Lee. I mean, I know we've never discussed this, but that is unfortunately the truth. I do read the transcripts though, and I think the transcripts sound great.
Okay, great. Well, that's good enough for me. If folks are just reading the transcript of this episode, I'd be pretty happy about it too. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, anyway. I do think they're solid. I think they're really solid as an approach, because I do think, narrowing in on just one topic is so important. And it's a sort of thing you can grasp. Like you can listen to it while you're making dinner and be like, oh, that's what, present sense impression means. And maybe you remember that on the test.
Yeah, I know. And I think one of the things that oftentimes people struggle with is connecting this law to facts is one way to make it make more sense. So sometimes through these hypos that we do, you can say, oh, I remember how the person talking about their broken leg to their doctor, that was state of mind. So you're starting to look for fact patterns that are linked to the law, which makes it's a different way to get it into your memory. It makes it more real than just state of mind is describing, a physical sensation that's currently in your body or something like that,
Right.
That's not going to be as easy to remember.
Yeah, because I think, we're humans, we think in stories. So if you can remember, what was, there was that story that I heard, someone telling me, which is literally what you're doing. I think it's a great way to, get this stuff in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, Allison, do you have any other favorite episodes now, having totally outed yourself that you don't listen to this podcast and the episodes that you're not a part of all the time? I'm I don't even know if we
you're
can be
shocked.
friends anymore.
I'm sorry.
I know.
I know. I mean, we have to quit talking to each other. No, some that we were actually doing together that I like, that I think are, again, going back to the idea of studying in the best way for you, is our series 15, 16, and 17, which is studying for the bar for different types of learning styles. And so, we have the auditory ideas, the visual ideas, the kinesthetic ideas. And I don't buy into, everybody is just one type or whatever. I think that's sort of ridiculous. Again, I think these are ways that you can use a variety of techniques to just make your studying hopefully more interesting and more effective.
Yeah.
So regardless of what type of learner you think you might be, I think everyone should listen or read all three of them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Well, with that, I think we're out of time, but I just want to say that it really means a lot to me that so many people have been listening and supporting us with these first 100 episodes. I think the bar is, a very focused amount of time for people. It's very focused content, and it means a lot to me that so many people who are in this experience have been listening. So I appreciate everyone who's taken the time to share our content.
Yeah, and I think we're well into our 6 figures of downloads, which is amazing.
Woo-hoo,
for so few people in the entire world who actually this is all relevant to for such a short period of time.
It's so
we
true.
We really appreciate it.
We
do reach out if you have ideas, because we're probably going to run out at some point.
Yeah, and we do keep a list, and we do talk about them and do content on them. So always feel free to email us. But with that, I think we're out of time. I want to take a second to remind you to check out our blog at barexamtoolbox.com, which is full of helpful tips to help you prepare and stay sane as you study for the bar exam. You can also find information on our website about our courses, tools, and one-on-one tutoring programs to support you as you study for the UBE or California bar exam. If you enjoyed this episode of the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast, please take a second to leave a review and rating on your favorite listening app. We'd really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you are still in law school, you might also like to check out our popular Law School Toolbox podcast as well. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Allison at lee@barexamtoolbox.com or allison@barexamtoolbox.com, or you can always contact us via our website contact form at barexamtoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.